We are live. Hello, everyone.
Hey, y'all.
Welcome to The New Left that is playing on both Fred Hampton Leftists and The Populist Voice. My name is Andrew. And with me is, if everyone want to just introduce themselves.
Sure. I'm Liv. Andrew and I are co-hosting for today.
We are co-hosts, yes. And
I'm Rutile. I'm a regular host here.
Yes. And
I'm an ex-podcast host, Delilah, aka Mom Earth Angry. Thanks for having me back, y'all.
Yes, happy to have you.
And Delilah is actually running a campaign right now that we're really excited to talk about. Yes. This was Delilah was a last-minute addition to our episode this week, and we are really excited to hear about her plans and her campaign and such. And so, yeah, thank you all for joining us. CJ, unfortunately, could not join us this week due to him going live on another show, Comrade Misty's show. And so, but us four will be taking it away.
With Novi. Novi will be joining us in an hour.
Yes, Novi will also be joining us in an hour. So thank you all very much. I love that. Where are my homosexuals at? We will definitely be talking about that. Don't you worry. So yeah, let's just go in and kind of just quickly deep dive, like not deep dive, shallow dive right now on what we're going to be talking about. So
touch it up.
Touch it up. We're going to be talking about the infrastructure bill that was just passed. Particularly some things on there that we don't like because, you know, we're cynical people and we like to point out things that we don't like and are problematic, which is why.
Because criticizing politicians and policies is democratic and our civic duty.
Yes.
That's why?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And which is why we have a Green Party candidate on, you know, also to kind of bring to light, hey,
Green
there are other
options.
There are options before, you know, that the half turd sandwich and the whole turd sandwich. And then we're going to be talking about Flint as well. And there's definitely a lot to dive into there. And I think it's just really important that we really discuss this and acknowledge what's happening in Flint because barely anyone is talking about it.
Say what is going on in Flint because it's not a new crisis that's going on. It's quite an ongoing one.
It's an ongoing crisis. It's a crisis that's been going on for 7 years.
Yeah.
And despite what the mainstream media wants to tell you, it is definitely not at all solved, right? No. It's not something that happened for 2 weeks like CNN would like you to think. And then, everyone has fresh, clean water again. We're fine.
Yep.
And so we're going to be talking about that. And then that's going to go into the climate report that recently came out that Liv is going to be enlightening us on. And then we're going to talk about Delilah's campaign. Then we're going to finish off with nice, light Amazon stuff. You know, different things you can buy on Amazon that are cool. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to talk about worker exploitation. Don't buy from Amazon. What are you kidding me? All right. So on that note, let's just now, just so you all know, I am brand new to this, so I'm going to share my screen.
Go easy on Andrew. He's
go
trying.
Easy on me. I am trying.
He's doing his best, and he's doing a great job.
So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to play this video of what the Senate approved. And I guess if y'all can, maybe while we're playing the video, if we can mute our mics so that the sound doesn't get saturated out. So give me.
You have to unmute yourself, Andrew. There you go. Perfect.
Can you hear?
Yep. Now we can't.
No?
I think you just have to turn the volume up. I think it's low, actually. No, it's all the way up.
It's back?
I can hear it. There you go. Here, turn it up a little more. And then we'll start it at the beginning.
Better?
No, turn it up. Up. Yep. More. You probably have to put it all the way. You can put the CC on the subtitles. Sorry, guys. Perfect. All right. Well, Andrew, why don't you work on this and I can recap?
Cool.
Okay. So this infrastructure bill, this 3.5 trillion infrastructure bill that was just passed by the Senate. Let's remember, they are not on recess right now. Has a lot of different points and initiatives that are talked about that are quite problematic. I'm going to pull it up right now on my own phone, and some of them involve the penalizing of municipalities of defunding the police while simultaneously spending a large amount of money to fund the police. It also is contains a plan to expand healthcare, education, and climate initiatives. It's to essentially pave the way for massive social security net expansion. It was adopted with a 50-49 vote after more than 14 hours of debate on the myriad of amendments. I believe it's specifically mentioned doing like universal pre-K for education. Anyways, she comes short on what we actually really need to do. Like, it's band-aids to all these systemic problems that are happening right now. And it's a good point of discussion of launching us into having more conversations on what the change is that does need to happen very soon, like now, like yesterday, actually. Before this report came out that said the world is ending, people, and on fire, we need to really act like ASAP. We can't be stalling right now. So we got to be talking about this bill. And if we can't, we can talk about, we can launch right into you, Andrew, going off about Flint and where some of this money could have been going to.
Well, I do have to say.
Oh, go, Rutal.
Oh, yeah, I have to say, there was a bit of a votorama not too long ago about just adding a lot of last-second details to the Senate bill. And Hawley had an amendment for 100,000 new police to be funded and to punish places that try to defund the police.
Yes.
And that amendment got support from all except for Bernie and 2 Republicans, Pat Toomey and Mike Lee.
Yeah. You know, if the Republicans are holding back, you're like, oh, okay, hang on. Because a lot of what I hear in this bill is criminalizing poor and working class people. I mean, I immediately there were red flags when people were talking about the per mile little hidden gem.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Usage, and I'm just, you know how many people, you know, who commutes to work. They're the people who don't make the highest wages usually, you know, and it's like you're just.
What Delilah is talking about is a tax per mile on drivers, and this is specifically targeting like Uber, Lyft, all those kinds of drivers. And Delilah, keep going on about that more.
Yeah, well, also, I mean, just to bring it around to Flint, what just recently is last year, were they talking about actually replacing some of the pipes after so many years? And again, it's a Band-Aid solution because these people have been suffering and having to rely on bottled water usage for how many years? Little Miss Flint is almost an adult, right? Like she's grown up, and like the fucking problems are still there, and her community, everybody's just like, oh, vote. how are you going to tell people vote when the problems never get better?
No.
It's like, I just, at this point, I mean, go on, Andrew.
Go off about Flint.
All right, yeah. So I guess we'll start our deep dive in Flint. And just before I go into Flint with the audio, y'all couldn't hear anything?
I could hear, there was like feedback.
There was feedback. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like hearing what was coming out of your speakers in your room.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, that's exactly what I want people to hear. All right, so we'll just do a deep dive in Flint. We'll talk about it like old time stories, and we can then try and use some videos as well if we're feeling brave, once we get there. But I think right now, let's just kind of dive into really what happened in Flint. So I think from the beginning, on April 25th in 2014, they switched the source at Flint from Detroit's water to Flint's water source in order to cut costs. Water activists actually say that they were privatizing the water, which I think there is a lot of evidence to say that they really were moving the water to privatization so corporations could get wealthy from this. So this was done 3 years after a 2011 study commissioned by Flint city officials determines its outdated water treatment plant was woefully incapable of treating Flint water. How's the sound? I'm getting some feedback. Is everything good? Okay. Awesome. So now flash forward to in March 2013, more than a year before the Flint water switch, this guy, Stephen Bush, who was a supervisor with the drinking water division there, emailed other environmental officials in preparation for a call about Flint's water options with State Treasurer Dylan Bush and the director Dan Wyatt. So Bush warned that continuous use of the Flint water would pose an increased microbial risk to public health, along with an increased risk of disinfection by product, which is carcinogens, to Flint residents. Proper corrosion control chemicals were not added into the Flint River supply at the time of the switch, a step that could have prevented lead in the aging pipes from dislodging into the water traveling into people's homes. What's more, at the time of the water switch, Flint's water plant didn't even have the proper equipment to add the corrosion control chemicals. So I think to break down a little bit about what's happening here, there were several different warnings to the Snyder administration, basically saying that the pipes could not handle Flint's water. It's very likely that there would be lead and even worse. And this just shows by October 2014, residents had been receiving discolored and odious water for months and had begun already to develop rashes while starting to lose hair. By the time the Snyder received Bush's October 2014 memo about the potential for a dangerous bacteria to be in the water, Flint residents had already been poisoned for 6 months. Epidemiologists were sounding the alarms, and particularly this woman, Valerie Brader, who was an environmental advisor, wrote an urgent email to discontinue Flint's water and to return to the Detroit system. Now, this guy, Baird, who was basically Snyder's right-hand man, threatened her to stop sending emails and literally was involved with bribing different whistleblowers who were coming forward, particularly victims who were coming forward and saying, look, I'm having all these health problems since this water was starting to switch. He bribed them to keep quiet, right? And so Snyder eventually, because the alarms finally went off to mainstream media and everybody in 2016 of January, that what was happening with the water in Flint. Snyder testifies that he had just found out, even though there is evidence of several different times when either he was heavily warned that this stuff like would happen, or that he was briefed. In fact, he was briefed shortly before he ran for governor for a second term. And so it's clear that he definitely kept it quiet. And it was recently found that public, and so this is why we're coming back to Flint. And this is why, we're starting to, because we've dug more into this story, or I shouldn't say we, I should say Status Quo, who has done a lot of this research. they dug in more, and it was recently found that public health officials who worked in the administration had their cell phones completely wiped during the time of October 16th and 17th, right around the time when it was starting to come out that people had Legionnaire's disease, which was caused from the chemicals in the water. And so it was impossible to really kind of go back into the private conversations because they had all been deleted. And I think it's important to highlight that 115 people have died, and even maybe more, because Legionnaire's disease, it gives you pneumonia-like symptoms. So a lot of people during that time also died of pneumonia. And to this day, because let's talk about this for a second. The water at Flint has not gotten any better. The pipes are still corroded. There still is disease in these waters, and people are still suffering the health consequences from it. And they recently, a few years ago, the EPA, not the EPA, but the city officials actually ran tests. And they fixed the numbers, ran tests on residents' waters, and basically told them it's fine. Even though it's later been confirmed with the EPA, but that the way they tested the water was not up to the EPA standards, and that, in fact, the water was still completely, it was still completely poisonous. And to this day, people have hair loss, teeth loss, Parkinson's disease, miscarriages, and a lot of residents are being forced to just drink from bottled water. Although, let's keep in mind, you still have to bathe, still have to use the shower. And so I think the biggest takeaway from this is that this is something that's going on for a while and still going on, and that there are hardly any news outlets that are talking about this, particularly the news outlets in Flint. Some local news outlets have been talking about it, but not all. And in reality, this should be really up there in front cover news, because people are literally still dying from this. And there's definitely a video I want to show you from hearing from some of the residents. But first, before we get that and give me more time to kind of figure that out, I would like to just hear all of your reactions to this based on what I just said, and maybe even additional information that you have with regards to what's been going on in Flint. So how about we'll go to Liv first, then we'll go to Delilah, then we'll finish with Rutal.
Here, I have a feeling that either Delilah or Rutal are really itching to go. So let's have one of them go first.
Okay.
I have a feeling this is a good topic for Rutal. Went real quick off mute, and I was like, oh, he's
let's go, Rutal.
All right. Well, recently there's been two major headlines that I've seen pop up in the last week or two. One is that Judge Judith Levy, she recently certified 2 class action lawsuits against some of the engineering firms that weren't included in an earlier settlement. And that's Lockheed Andrews and Newman and Veolia North America. And they are some of the firms that gave really bad advice to the Flint policymakers, saying everything was fine, proceed as normal. Also, the House Oversight Committee is investigating Governor Snyder's cover-up of all that evidence with the wiped phones and everything. And all of this really plays into a larger American pattern of systemic violence. Mm-hmm. Poisoning someone's children with lead, that is violent. Poisoning a whole community with lead, that is violent.
Yeah.
This is what we mean when we say there's systemic violence that the country perpetrates and is generally kicked under the rug as not even real violence because it's on a mass scale. If you poison one child with lead, you go to jail. But if you poison the whole community with lead, complicated lawsuits for a couple of decades, who knows where anything will go.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you made. A lot of communities recently, I was on As All Get Out podcast with Novi and Austin, and we were talking about Flint and the early stages, like the early preliminary, this is the infrastructure bill, this is what we're going to have, just stuff that the White House put out. And at that time, Flint residents, we were talking about that, and they still were not trustworthy of the water, and they were getting pushback from the media and other, leaders of their communities that were like, oh, well, they replaced some pipes, so it's better. And it's like, they're not, like, it's not better. You know what I mean? Like, we're here every day and we see the water, it doesn't smell right. And
Nope.
and, you know, Andrew pointed out, like, you still have to shower. Those toxins can
Yeah.
come into your bloodstream, you know what I mean? From high exposure. So and it's like, who do you blame? And it's always an attempt to just blame, oh, why do people still live there? Oh, why this, why that? And it's like, people don't have the option to move or to get
No.
to a new place or choose where their county picks their water from. You know, they don't make the public aware of these changes that affect them and have been affecting them for 7 years now. And there's not enough of a pushback to really address the problem. Even if they get caught up in litigation for years, that's not going to solve the actual crisis of not having clean drinking water for yourself or your family.
Yeah. And right before our podcast, you mentioned something, Delilah, about Little Miss Flint. You want to touch on who that is and like this little adult who's grown?
I don't know if you've seen her. She's just like a clean water advocate. She's on Twitter and they've got a small nonprofit set up. But you know, the situation is like she's had to be a child living through this. You know what I mean? And her perspective is very important. So you know, it's just it's sad that she still does this, you know what I mean, with such dedication, because it affects her every day. It affects the people she loves every day. And so she continues on, and it's like, it's shameful that we haven't solved this problem. It's perfectly acceptable to solve this problem. It only furthers the corporations and the people who are getting paid to exploit people. It only serves their purposes to just, you know, make this seem like it's not a big problem anymore, or like these people are irrelevant.
Yeah. And kind of like what Rutai was just saying about like how this is violence. Like, in my opinion, this is crimes against humanity. Like, this is being known perpetrated violence against a whole community of people. And it's already like a primarily like Black African American community. It's already a disadvantaged community. And then you force this violence upon them of depriving them from one of their rights of clean water. And that is violent to deprive someone, just like with our homeless epidemic, just like, which has been intensifying and is now just intersecting with, I'm sure, in Flint with the water crisis there. Like, we got to be talking about these issues and the systemic change that has to happen to address these issues, not just fixing a few pipes here and there. Like, no, we want to change the whole infrastructure of the system. Like, we need everything changed. No, not a single trace of lead to be left. We want everything changed. We want clean water for all, among other things, but we can start with clean water. And we need to keep talking about this. I believe her name is it Mary? It's Mari. Is it Mary Copany? Who's Little Miss Flint on Twitter. Like, we got to promote these people who are like still voicing these causes and like give them platforms to be like, this is what's going on in my community and we need help. We need your help. And you need to speak up about these issues. Do not let them go silent. Like, do not let them be forgotten. Do not let them be washed away in the 24-hour news cycle. Like, that's, you know, do not be played by mainstream media. Like, just be vigilant about these causes that are going on that need to be fought for.
Yeah, I think one takeaway I had, and this is something, and I wish I could show the video. We can maybe try later, but one of the people who was being interviewed in Flint said, people need to realize that when it comes to these types of situations, there's no difference between Democrats and Republicans, right? And that just brings me back to how, you know, the classic, whenever someone was trying to shame you into voting, right? Shame you into voting for Biden, shame you into voting for Hillary, particularly well-off white people would say, like, you know, it's showing your privilege if you have apathy in this election, right? And I think it's just, think about obviously the people in Flint, right? Obama was president when Flint happened with them. Yes, they had a Republican governor. Now they have a Democratic governor. Their water is still poisonous, right?
Yep.
And so I think about that when someone says like privilege. It's like, no, sometimes there are people who literally are just like, my community is struggling right now. It doesn't matter the color of the governor or the letter next to their name. The same shit is happening, right? And I think that is something that a lot falls on a lot of deaf ears, that a lot of people who are living comfortably, who just are watching, you know, these mainstream medias that just continuously talk about just like things were fine till Trump, right? Trump bad, Democrats blue, right? They miss all the other things that are happening within that. And I think that's just always something people need to think about and such. Anyone else have anything else to say regarding that? I think everyone went, right? Child,
Yeah, I do. I only have one more consideration, and you brought it up already. These people have, you know, longstanding medical illnesses and conditions from being exposed to poor drinking water, and it's like, you know, we can't even ensure. So we are directly harming these people's health, and nobody can get healthcare. Like in this country, everybody's being exposed to environmental, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? All of these things that are harmful to them, environmental issues that are. It's like, okay, they're exploiting the water, and somebody's gonna make more money off of it. So no, we can't go back to the clean water you were used to because we already fucked you over. We're gonna just go ahead, you know, take your budget and do what we want to and make it privatized so these other people can take the benefits that you're not, you know, you don't have the rights to. And then on top of that, deny these people even the basic of, like, you know, healthcare when they're being poisoned by their government. And that's fine. Everybody's just fine with that. Yeah, it's crazy. It's like, it just adds up. There's more and more every week. And it sounds like this, honestly, with the storm, the winter storm, they were, you know, same thing, were privatized. And anyway, that's not here or there. It is frustrating.
We'll get into that.
Yeah. Sorry, Ruta, were you gonna say something else?
Oh yeah, it's just wild how the liability for all these harms and all these financial burdens brought by these harms, these are policy choices, but the liability for who ends up paying and footing the bill for these travesties is always pushed to the individual. It wasn't an individual's choice to change the water supply. There was no vote. And so all of these people have to pay out of pocket to their health insurance, to their doctors, to, heck, bottled water companies. Because of the costs that were incurred to them, a liability by people who were acting entirely outside of their control. Like, you wouldn't see any international, like, business have to deal with liabilities that were outside of their control like that, but we force that on the individual citizen. It's absolutely wild how they always pass the buck down here.
Yeah.
I think, don't quote me exactly on the number, but I believe, you know, with Governor Snyder's legal fees, that was all out of the taxpayers' money, and it was something around $8.5 million. So going off of what Rutai was saying, right, in terms of people don't get a say, they didn't get a vote on where the water is coming from. Now, not only do they not get a vote, they have to pay for his fuck up.
Yeah.
And it always comes off the typical person, right, the tax-paying resident, right? It always comes off of them, and so I think that, and I think Connie's bubbles is an excellent point. You know, they could use state of emergency to provide health care, right? Why don't they have Medicare for all, right? Because it says if there is some state of emergency, right? These people literally are underinsured and sick, and some are literally dying. And I can only think of the amount of, especially the children in this, right? The amount of damage that they would be done, maybe in terms of their health, right? In terms of maybe, the chemicals mess with your brain, right? In terms of their education, right? And this was all because of negligence, corporate greed, white supremacy, capitalism. And so,
All comes back to capitalism.
Which both the Democrats and the Republicans are bought. What, Delilah?
Oh, I was like, I'm wearing coffin nail earrings to symbolize death to capitalism because I'm so over it.
Love it.
Wonderful.
Love it.
we have a public health expert here, Eileen MC. Yes. Thanks, Eileen.
Yeah, so these people are being poisoned, and even if they had health coverage, they're still being poisoned. So it's like, again, they wouldn't even come close to addressing the situation and the potential generational issues, like health-wise.
Talk about generational trauma.
Yeah.
Like, holy God, what are we going to do? Like,
generational burdens. Yeah, like generational burdens. Getting lead poisoning.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Lead poisoning as a child hurts your lifelong impacts.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think, and this is, I think, something, we kind of covered this, but I think it's something worth kind of talking a little bit about, like, why isn't the media really talking about Flint too much? Why is it pulling teeth to even getting basic politicians, right? Some politicians have finally, started recognizing, like, the recent reports and, like, oh, this is still going on, right? Like Rashida Tlaib, Ro Khanna, right? But, like, a lot of politicians aren't talking about this. A lot of media outlets are not talking about this. So, yeah, like, I'm curious to hear, we could start with Delilah, then work up to Rutile and Liv. Why? Why do you think that?
Well, right. So privatized industries have an invested interest in keeping people down and making sure they don't have the rights that they, these rich people deny the rest of us these rights all the time. And the politicians are like, you know what, if I seem like I care, they'll keep voting for me. I'll stay in my position. And then I'll just talk about it and that'll be enough. I won't have to actually address it or make any fundamental changes or advocate for specific policy choices. All I have to do is talk about it and sympathize, and that's enough to keep me in power. And it's like, after a while, I think the invested industries are like, well, if we give them clean water, what are they going to want next? Better quality of life? I mean, when does it end? They want us to pay. They want us to tax the wealthiest. I don't know. I mean, I saw them at our dinner last week. Maybe I don't want to piss them off until after the election. Like, that's just, like, it's just obscene. The lack of regard for the public. I mean, if anything, COVID has just been a glaring reminder of how fucked we are as a public. And it's just like, that's why, that seems very clear to me that the reason why these politicians often don't take, grow a fucking spine and do some, make some noise and actually stand by their words is because they don't really think they have to.
No.
That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. And building on that, when you're thinking about, like, the reporting that happens on all of this, the incentives for a profit-making reporting institution is largely advertisement or boosting their corporate donors to make themselves more advertiser-friendly. And they don't want to lose their leads, so they don't want to piss off the people that they have, like, inroads with. So if you have inroads with a governor's office, they're going to stop answering your press release questions. If you start giving them bad press, they won't call on you for the press briefing. So you're a magazine, say you're New York Times, you say, okay, the Flint story? Is there a new update? Is there a hook? Is there a clear good guy, bad guy? Well, there's not an election for several years that might make a meaningful difference. So there's no real hook for how people can solve it. There's no real hook for like clear narratives of good guy v bad guy now that they have a D next to the name for the new governor. It looks like everyone did what they were supposed to solve the problem, and the problem still isn't solved. So if the newspaper highlights that, all they're highlighting is that you can't solve the problems with the conventional tools that you're told that you're supposed to solve problems with, and that's not a story they want to run.
Yeah. Well, going off that, that's exactly because we did exactly what we were told to do, what we were gaslighted into telling we were supposed to do, which is vote, and we will get the change that we were supposed to see. And it didn't happen with Bernie in 2016. It didn't happen in 2018 with the squad. It didn't happen in 2020 with Bernie again. So y'all, like, we got to do this ourselves. Like, I'm done trusting politicians. I'm especially done trusting the Democrats and the Republicans, though. And they are bought and sold by capitalism's top corporate funders. And nothing's going to change. Kind of like what Delilah said, like with these representatives, like nothing is going to change when they're all getting the socialized medicine we're fighting for, and they are getting paid a very comfortable salary and getting how many recess? They're still on, the House is on recess right now. They abandoned us right before the eviction moratorium expired. Remember that. Do not forget that when it's about to expire again. So they abandoned us, and they just postponed the problem a little bit longer. Again, Fraud Squad, don't trust them. So like, we just gotta be fighting for this for ourselves. And here, let's see what we got in the chats right now. Reform and revolution is on the agenda. Let's go. Like Professor Wolf, like, yes, like, let's go. Like, let's be talking about the revolution and what our set of demands are. And this is what we are fighting for. And guys, like, I maybe we can have Andrew come in, and then we can tie this into, like, because the world is on fire and we're all at the climate apocalypse now. So, Andrew, thoughts?
Yep. Thoughts on the climate apocalypse?
On
or
wrapping this up,
wrapping
and
up
us into the climate apocalypse.
Yes. So, I think my biggest thoughts, is it's hard to sometimes even know. Like, I think this uncovering in Flint really exposed the fact of the threatening politics at play, right? For example, having Snyder's right-hand man actually threaten people who talked about it, right? Yeah. And so I think, who's to say that this doesn't exist on a larger scale, particularly even with reporters on corporate media, right? Yeah. Where particularly the people that have a stake in corporate media, I have no doubt they probably say to many of them, like, if you say anything about this, we are going to make your life very miserable, right? Yeah. And so I think that is just something, and I think that just talks about, like, it's not even necessarily that the reporters themselves are bad people, although you do have to wonder why they are complicit with all of this, right? You have to ask those questions. But I think it's just, when you are in a corrupt structure, it makes it so that it's a culture of groupthink, and it's a culture of we're going to just kind of just go under the radar and talk about things like that are easy to talk about, such as, things that divide people, because you're not really, when you're starting to talk about individual stupid people, you're not really threatening large power structures. You're just talking about certain people doing, and so that's, I think, always something worth thinking about as well. But yes,
don't trust mainstream media, because they are also part of the capitalism system. They are bought, and they are producing exactly what they're told to say. So support investigative journalists. Please support them. Free Assange. Thank you in the comments. Like, we got to be fighting for our investigative journalism right now and free speech, y'all. And hate speech and not free speech.
that falls, you know what? There's obviously, if I could just go off for a second
Yes.
on side subject,
Go.
because we're talking about who's invested and why is the media complicit in letting these stories that divide us and have us pointing the fingers at each other. You know, why are they playing a part to all of this? And it just got me thinking about how all these Democrats voted on increasing more funding for the police,
Yep.
and going after the people who are defunding, the cities who are making those changes. And the whole principle about defund is you're going to reallocate the money and help the community, because the cops aren't social workers, they're not mental health advocates. And like, you just keep thinking about like these donors who are invested in paying these people off, and it's like that was why for me the decision to run with Green Party was like, so I was like, oh, I can't take money from corporations. That's great. You know what I mean? Like, I'd rather struggle than have to worry about somebody doing a report like, oh, you took a donation from, I mean, if you look at a lot of the Dems, they take a lot of money from the pharmaceutical industry, and so do the Republicans. They're more blatant about their fossil fuel money, but it's like, the media obviously plays a role.
Joe Biden gets a lot. Just saying.
What's that?
Joe Biden.
Sorry, I was just going to say Joe Biden gets a lot if you look at his stash of fossil fuel. But sorry, I continue. Just a side comment.
No, you're absolutely right. But it's just like when you think everybody's like follow the money, and you're just like, America's run by corporations. I mean, which one? Like,
which three corporations in a trench suit?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, why don't we, while we're talking, like, just dig in, because Delilah, you said you're running for office. Why don't you just dig in a little bit, and just say, like,
do it.
What office you're running for? Because you already said you're running, so now we might as well just tell everybody what you're running for.
Yeah.
Where, what platform what are some of the top things that are on your platform, and what are you trying to do? Just go for it.
Right. Yeah. Well, not a lot of people know on the Twitter realm, but I am running for governor of Texas. And I'm with the Green Party. Our official nomination process is in November. Okay. So it's like a unofficial, but I'm the only Green candidate. And so everybody thinks it's just, it's not a worthy battle. And I'm just like, they blew a pipeline through the Texas Hill Country, not too far from where I live. And we got zero media coverage. I mean, like, it was not, nobody was talking about it on social media. And they kept it up in litigation for so long. This company, Kinder Morgan, they paid, they sent money to the high school. They sent money here. They're more than happy to spend all amounts of resources on not doing the right thing, which would have been to abandon the project because it's too close to the springs. And like, I just witnessing that and being a part of that firsthand opened my eyes to our weaknesses as a group, as a society. If we keep giving the power to these people who don't have our vested interests, they're not in line with our interests, they're not affected by the damages that we have to face. And so we've got to do something about that. So that's, I made this decision, and I've got some people who are behind me, gratefully, to try and take Texas over because we're right in the thick of it. You know what I mean? And I've just kind of grown up just overwhelmingly exposed time and time again to environmental disasters that are created by capitalism, that are created by colonialism, that are created by a for-profit industry that has no concern for the public's well-being and health. So yes, I don't know if you guys have any specific questions for me. Everything's online. Obviously, I'm a healthcare worker. I've been a healthcare worker for 18 years. And, there's nothing worse, like going back to Flint, there's nothing worse than seeing a sick child, because you just want to do everything to help them and make them right. And they're so innocent. And, you know what I mean? It's one thing if it's an accident, it's another thing when somebody knew very well what they were going to put. They were willing to gamble on yours and your family's health for their own profit. I'm sick of it. I'm so fucking tired. So healthcare is obviously on my platform. That's number one. And then I am very much against the fossil fuel industry. I don't like anything. They've had their way with the state long enough, so they need to pack up and move out. Yep. They need to get the hell out of here and stay the fuck away from our water. That's a problem that I have, and I want more people to care about that because I don't want us to be Flint. You know what I mean? And it's like I don't want us to be 70 years being exposed to, contaminated water. And like Austin is one of there's so much of like there's a real estate boom going on right now, and all these tech jobs are moving. They're like, cost of living's so cheap, it's so great. And it's like, okay, but if you don't have clean water, how are you gonna feel about that? Yeah. How are you gonna feel about your taxes not helping make sure, we don't even have mask mandates in Texas right now. It is against the law right now to have a mandate for masks at school because our governor's a bigot. Yeah. And all of these people and these kids are being exposed to COVID right now because our governor said, well, we don't care about their health. I mean, he didn't say that verbatim, but how else are you going to explain what your goal is when you're trying to make people sick like this? Yep. Lots to talk about. Texas is an ongoing, you know what I mean? Like all the time, there's something horrific being planned or schemed or discussed in back rooms, and it puts the public's health at risk all the time. That's there's it's a multi-layered thing. I'm happy to talk about whatever you want to talk about though, and I appreciate you wanting me to talk about it on your show.
I appreciate you giving people an option that they can vote for something other than Democrats or Republicans.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I mean, it was funny because as I realized, we're having you on this show. I was like, okay, well, we definitely should dedicate a good amount of time just to, uplift your platform a little bit because this is not always an opportunity that we get. And so any way that we can kind of help bring the word out because, Texas politicians are awful, man. Like, they are like the worst of the worst. Let me just obviously, but just from what I've seen on the outside, it is wild. Like,
oh my God. Yeah, they're all waiting. As soon as they're done with their run, they'll be the next Alex Jones, screaming at people in the streets, just being an arrogant asshole. It's awful. And so where I work, I just started at a new place like 2-3 months ago. And I worked with a lot of people at the last place. And they were like, excuse me, you're running for office? Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me? And everybody's just like, what are you doing? I didn't know. I'm so excited. And I'm just like, oh, okay, that's great. Thank you for paying attention. I would love if more people... Honestly, a goal of mine is to get more people to vote because they feel like it's against the law to do ranked choice voting in the state. We can't, we would have to go around. It's not even a potential to legally call it that. And people are just so unaware of the situation because they're like, oh, it's cheap to live in Texas. It's fine. Oh, if people drink beer and tacos, it's like, no, dude, there's so much more going on. Like, yes, that's cool. And we love that. We want to keep, keep up the vibe. But like, there's other parts that we need to pay attention to. And I just want more people to pay attention to what's going on because in the long run, there are only so many places to move, right? We're watching climate breakdown right now in real time, and if that's not enough to radicalize you, I don't know. I don't know what could. Oh no, we lost.
I bet they'll be back soon.
Okay.
Yep, there you are. And Delilah, you have a question.
Yeah.
Oh, what's the question?
Toasty toast.
What does Delilah think of the latest Texas Congress Democrat shenanigans?
You know what? I try not to sound cynical, and I try to be, you know what I mean. I've met Democrats that I get along with, and I think they're good people. I don't like saying, "Oh, Republicans this" or Democrats that, like blanket make assumptions of people based on their party. I think that it's sad, first of all, that their brilliant scheme to go to Washington was fruitless, although predictable in my opinion. I don't think that, and they went over there and they infected a lot of people with COVID too, which was like, that's that's not cool. You don't just like go to somebody's house and then give them COVID like from not masking. Anyway, I think that it's a good example of how dire the situation is, because they're trying to do a filibuster. They're trying to hold off on voting on these really aggressive restrictions, and it's not going to go anywhere. They don't have majority, and they won't, because often, Texas used to be Democratic all the way. Most people voted democratically in Texas decades ago, and they don't do that anymore because the Democratic Party has lost people's faith from things like this. From, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to pull this stunt, and I'm going to get some news, and people are going to pay attention to me, and we're going to be like, yeah, we won. It's like how AOC was talking about, oh, we got to celebrate the wins. These wins aren't anything for regular working class people to celebrate.
No.
It doesn't help them. So you pulling a stunt and going to Washington and getting no help from the Democratic-led Congress in Washington is a very clear indicator of how powerless you are and how powerless your party is, because you are not actually being a party of opposition. You're pretending to be a party of opposition, and that is landing, all of the weight of your failures are falling on the working class. So that's how I feel about it.
It's just Democrat BS. It's just performance acts. It's just theatrics. It's just the Democrats. Guys, don't buy into it, please.
Yeah, if you looked at the Texas Democrats on Twitter, they're just like, oh, we're afraid because we're afraid of GOP gerrymandering, and we're like, you guys do it too. You do it too, right? Like, you're gonna just pretend that you're innocent of failing the people continually, or benefit, or making it so that you benefit. It's like, why are you acting like that? If you at least were honest, I would have, you know what I mean? There wouldn't be such an abandonment of the party. We wouldn't have so many people who would just don't bother to vote here if it weren't for the continual failures of the Democrats, I think,
Yep.
Yeah.
I hope that answered their question.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I think one thing that was interesting that you were saying, I think before we came on here, is that you would just tax the fossil fuel industry out of existence. And so just curious to hear a little bit more about kind of what that would look like in practice, like how you kind of go about taxing them out of existence when it comes to
Well, the first thing is to cut off their subsidies. I mean, that's the first thing that needs to happen. And so, people are not sure how a carbon tax would work, but especially in a state like Texas, where we could do really well with wind and solar, if there's no initiative for these companies and they don't show that they're going to invest in renewables, then they should be taxed for the damages. It's obscene to me that they have budgets to pay for the messes they make, but not enough in their budgets to just plan smartly and use renewable. Like, you know what I mean? Fossil fuels have always been a limited resource. That's just been a fact that everybody knows, and that their business model is built off of the opposite should not fall on the public. That should not be, every working class person's responsibility to bear the burden of that idiotic risk that they're willing to take. So something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, we gotta cut off those. They always have their hands out for money. They're the first ones, and conservatives continually vote. From what I've researched, it's normally conservatives who keep voting for these folks who are like fall for the propaganda that fossil fuels is the only way for us to survive, which if you look at my ancestors, they would argue that that's just not true. And there's plenty of other options. So yeah, we don't do federal taxes in Texas, but we have a federal budget in Texas. And so honestly, the reason why I wanted to run why governor is the right option for me is because that kind of, you get to make the decisions. You get to put bills into effect pretty quickly in this state. Greg Abbott has made a mockery of justice in this state time and time again, and used and abused his power. And it's like, yeah, I mean, somebody's got to do something for the greater good of the economy and our people and quit. It's so sad that we're in this situation,
Yeah.
Yeah. The oil and gas company has so many people in their pockets, but not everybody agrees with them. And I just need those people to kind of work with me more. That would be great.
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of like we were saying earlier with Flint, that they always try to shuttle public mistakes and the costs of these corporate tragedies onto the individual. And I'm really glad you're giving people another option, that the corporations should bear those liabilities that they're causing to the communities.
Yeah, the corporations effectively have more power and legal protections than an individual does. And I don't think enough people are aware of that. I don't think that enough people are concerned with that, because I honestly consider that a public risk and you know what I mean? Like, if a corporation doesn't have to answer for their misdeeds, then you know what I mean? Like, the cycle will be endless. We will never see any change. Reading the question.
Yeah. So, would you try to get Texas on the national grid, or just stay independent and just concentrate on renewable energy? All right.
Well, I would ideally like to see our grid go publicly owned first, and then see how people want to do that.
Hi, Novi.
Hi. I'm on my way home.
You're driving. Cool. We were talking about the Texas grid again.
Oh yeah, the one that should be on the national grid.
Yep.
Please. Please.
No, well, I think a public utility, it should be made a public utility and then expand from there. That's what I think.
Oh, that would work really well.
Right.
That would be so much better than what we have now. And it'd be a good test case and point to show that, hey, government controlling the utilities would actually really work in the U.S., as it would be in the second largest state.
Are you actively driving? Like, are you?
No.
No, my spouse is driving.
Okay, great.
I am not driving. My spouse is driving.
I was concerned.
No, my spouse is driving. So.
Hello, Novi spouse. Drive safe.
No,
all right.
They are a fantastic driver. So.
Good. Perfect.
Toasty Toast has got a question. Can you educate us simple folks on the anti-mask mandate laws passed by Abbott, if you feel like it?
Well, okay. So basically what he did is he said the publicly funded schools, this is important to understand, the private schools are free to do as they wish in regards to masks. The publicly funded schools are not. And he has targeted those specifically to say you cannot make masks mandated on your premises. That's against the law for you to do that. It infringes upon people's rights. So that's what Greg Abbott has done. And the reason I want to tell you that it's an important distinction is because Texas is a pro-business state, and most of the laws are written for a private industry to benefit versus, the betterment of our public. So yeah, school districts are not allowed to enforce masks on their campuses. It's pretty simple. They just, you can send your kid to school with a mask, and they can make the decision, but the school's not allowed to say this is the decision. And you have to understand, 12 and under, or I think they have to, either way, young people cannot get the vaccine, as well as people with disease and things like that. They can't, the vaccine is for them. They're not allowed to have it. And some of these people go to public school, and are being at a higher rate exposed than they were last year. So that's what's going down with the mask mandates down here. All the screens are.
It's absolutely wild.
Yeah, it is. I have kids, and we opted to we opted to teach them from home instead.
Really?
Can't. Yeah.
How's it going?
Well, school starts tomorrow, so it's gonna be, interesting. It's gonna be interesting for sure. I know other parents who don't have that option though, and are very stressed with their kids. Sorry, phone rang. So yeah, the kids can't get the vaccines, and they're sending them to school just worrying about their health, and I'm hopeful that we don't see a huge rise in kids with COVID, but I think we're just going to see a lot of cases, and unfortunately some kids are going to end up on vents, I imagine, because we do not fully understand this illness as much as we would like to.
Nope, we don't.
Yeah.
Tying that back in with Flint again a little bit, I've been hearing some things about COVID impacting brain development, and that really worries me about children going back to school.
Yeah, so, when COVID first hit, they were like, it's a respiratory thing. And then they found soon after that it's a circulatory problem. It goes after your heart specifically, and you get there's an inflammatory response. And that decreases your oxygen levels, and obviously your brain needs a high amount of oxygen to function. So any short period of time or extended period of time without oxygen is going to have neurological effects. And I'm not a doctor. I would never say that I was. But that's just how it's been working, and we're seeing things as we go along. It's an ever-evolving thing, but yeah, I would not be surprised if the research shows that it's a neurological issue as well. We know long-term COVID affects, your heart long-term as well. So it's just, any cardiovascular disease has risks associated to it.
Yeah. One question I have is, how have you been able to campaign sort of with this pandemic? And, how, in terms of talking to people, like, have you been able to connect with people? Have you had any luck sort of connecting with people who typically weren't really thinking about the Green Party and have now kind of been opened up and realized that this is an option? I'm just curious to hear how those kind of conversations have gone.
Well, with consideration to campaigning, I've been hesitant to do in-person events because I don't want people to be exposed. And I know for a short period of time, everybody's vaccinated, we're good. And it's like, you can still spread COVID even if you're vaccinated. So I've been a little hesitant to do a lot of things like that, but we're going to try, especially over the summer or over the fall, do more in-person events. And hopefully people will host us in outdoor areas so that we can have these conversations. And then, just people that I've worked with or I have a history with are being a little bit more considerate of Green Party, thankfully, who otherwise wouldn't have been. They'd either be long-term Republicans or long-term Democratic voters. We have a large chunk of independent, non-affiliated voters in Texas that I'm hoping to talk to more, because we don't have a great presence in Texas. I wish, I'm not going to lie to you. We don't have a great presence. We need to do more as a state party to get out and show people that we're there and participate. We did do a Medicare for All march, down at the Capitol, and that was really cool. I got to talk to some people, and we opened up the mic to other people to share their experiences, which was really great for all of us to kind of just share their experiences with lack of healthcare and what it means to them, what it means to their families. So we're just moving off of that and trying to go forward. So we're going to do a Green New Deal march, I think in Katy, Texas, this month. And then hopefully, we're a very big volunteer-led party. So I'm just one person, and I'm doing the best I can to talk to as many people as I can and just keep focused on the issues. But honestly, we need to do a lot more. We have to get out more. We've got to talk to more people, and we need a better volunteer base, honestly, to let people know that they do have another option in Texas.
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, maybe we could do one or two more questions, and then we could move on to Cuomo and Me Too, which might be a good opportunity to explain the point. Does that sound good? That sound like a good? So one question, does anyone have a question? If not, we can go to one question in the chat.
We have so many questions in the chat.
Yeah, one.
I had a question in case you haven't already covered this. So since Texas is this big gas state, like we produce natural gas, we produce oil. What do you want to do to expand our utilization of solar and wind power? I mean, we have wind power out in the Panhandle, but it's nowhere near enough.
Yeah, we touched on that a little bit earlier, but I'm happy. I'll talk more about it if that's okay with everybody else. Ideally, we need to cut off the subsidies going to the oil and gas corporations, and via taxes incentivize them to invest in renewables, because they've overexploited our state. And the reason why wind and solar is not picking up is specifically because the oil and gas industry keeps pushing them down. I think we had a carbon capture process that was begun in Texas, and the reason that failed is because they tried to use the carbon capture process to push oil up from the bedrock, and it just backfired and didn't do well. So once we get rid of their handouts and their bonuses, I think we'll see some good change happening in Texas. That's my hope, at least.
Thank you. Guys, we have to wrap up soon. So we'll get comments on this. This is a shared stream, so we are the Fred Hampton leftists will be continuing this. Nick will be going on soon. So we'll just comment on thank you for running. Thank you for being the people, a choice for the people, and not taking PAC or corporate donations. We lost Rutal. What?
Oh no.
Yeah, Rutal. Yeah. Oh, hold on. Rutal's back.
Hey.
Hello.
Yes.
Do you guys want to talk trash about Cuomo real quick? Because I was really looking forward to it.
Yeah, we can just for like 2 minutes we can talk trash about Cuomo. Yeah. So I guess thoughts on Cuomo, thoughts on the Me Too. Maybe everyone could just kind of give their quick reactions to all of that. So if you want to start, Delilah, and then we could make our way down to Novi, Rutal, Liv, and then I can round it off.
Okay, I'll try to make it short. Sexual assault survivors should not have to be exploited in such a way that the media uses them to paint their rehabilitated predators in a good light. So I believe Tara Reid Cuomo probably has some other plan for himself and is going to try and use this as a ladder to step up the corporate, scheme somewhere else. I don't think him resigning is enough. I think he should be held accountable via the legal system for his actions. I'm done.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. Novi, what say you?
So I'm of two minds. One, we had Cuomo and the hiding the deaths in the nursing homes and all the other stuff going on. So part of me really wishes that we would have gotten him out of office then, when he was hiding people dying, because that's like super bad. And also, I agree with Delilah. Like, we basically had to give these women who've already had a intimate part of themselves tarnished, like their space violated in such a horrible way. And instead of talking about how this monster did this to them, instead we're kind of doing it some sort of porn almost. Like, instead of talking about, hey, that he needs to be paying restitution, we're just talking over and over again about how these women were violated. And it's really, really bad. I mean, it's glad that he resigned, but I don't think it's enough. And the way the media handled it was really messed up.
Yeah. And it shouldn't have taken 11 accusers to take a man down. And men who are faced with accusation shouldn't really be fighting it all on a pure defensive, nothing happened, nothing's wrong, absolute rejection of accountability basis either. If anything that he said was in the slightest bit true, that he didn't think that there was anything wrong with his actions, he could have accepted a process of accountability. He could have spoken with the support networks of the people who accused him and defined concrete methods for exploring what happened, what behavioral patterns arose, defining sustainable timeline of actions and lessons that could be worked through to graduate towards a better future. But instead of any of this harmless model of accountability, Cuomo just full on smashed the brakes, said nothing happened, nothing's wrong, don't blame me for anything. And the media was almost ready to just walk away and let him have it, like the nursing homes, until people kept coming out with another allegation and another one, and he started losing support from other politicians. Is when they finally started taking it seriously. And of course, there's that 168-page report. It shouldn't take 168 pages of a report to start even addressing that a problem could exist.
Yep. All great points. Okay, I don't even know. I have a whole speech plan, guys. Wow, how do I sum this up in 30 seconds? Okay, so Me Too and Time's Up are both two movements that we really need to revive right now and are part of the liberation movement that we need to be leading for this revolution right now. And resignation does not equal accountability. Also, I'm seeing in the comments about Epstein, hashtag Epstein did not kill himself, because Epstein did not hang himself with a paper t-shirt. And now Ghislaine Maxwell's trial is set for November 2021. We need justice. We need accountability. We need to find out. We need all these secrets exposed, and this is going to damage and fuel the revolution. We need this. We need this. We need the truth. And also Virginia Roberts Guffrey, just filed another case she had one against Ghislaine Maxwell. She just filed one against Prince Andrew. So this is getting the ball rolling, guys. Let's go. And then also side comment, the audacity of Biden to comment saying Cuomo should resign when Tara Reade has gotten absolutely no justice. I believe Tara Reade and hashtag impeach Biden. I'm just so done. I'm so done of sexual predators just gaslighting us further and being more predatory and preying on us, especially in positions of power. So fuck that. That's how I feel. Believe women and give them the platform that they need and deserve to come forward and make that a safe space.
Yes.
Yeah, very well said all around.
All survivors, sorry, not just women, all survivors.
Yeah.
Good.
So for the sake of this, I think, there's not really too much I think I can add. And we want to make sure Nick has his space. But I just wanted to close this out by saying, first of all, Delilah, it was great hearing about kind of your ideas and your vision for what you would implement if given the opportunity to be governor of Texas. And I also want to just thank our viewers for hanging in there and your patience. I know the beginning was a little rough with technology. We will learn how to do this better next time and such, and make it more kind of with videos and cues. But overall, I was happy with the conversations we were able to get in just by talking raw. Sometimes it's just cool just to talk raw and talk things out with ourselves, even though, videos would have been good too, but oh well, we'll get them next time. But I just wanted to thank our viewers and everything. On that note, we'll be heading out.
Bye,
Bye guys. Thank y'all.
Thank you.